This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hi everyone, Mike here. I just wanted to jump in before the episode gets underway. So, as you might know, Case and I, we record these episodes pretty far in advance. This next one, episode 13, we actually recorded on the 16th. So we kind of work on about a 2-week delay on these things. But I wanted to stop in first to just do a little bit of a foreword. As we record this on the 16th, we recorded this before the Speaking Out movement started and before certain people were named. And we get more into this on episode 14, but I wanted to make sure that we had this out here ahead of time. So there are people that have been named in the Speaking Out movement who sadly are on these episodes. And I can speak for both Case and I as we support the victims. We believe the victims. We hope that they get whatever sort of justice that could help them heal. And we aren't going to delete mentions of people like Austin Aries is on the show. Austin Aries has been named. We kind of view this project as like a historical record. So we're still going to talk about Austin Aries. Obviously, our opinion and all of that will change and has changed because of these things. But we totally understand if, because of recent events and like the content matter, if listeners decide that, hey, this person's on these shows, I don't want to hear about them, and they just X out the podcast. We understand that's no slight against us, and we support everyone having to cope with this however they need to fit. So just wanted to jump in here and say this first before we got this episode underway. So what I need to do, here's the show.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to freedom. Dance tonight together. Here everybody's singing.
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate, Rewind and Rewatch, covering Freedom Fight 2010 from October 30th, 2010 from Rahway, New Jersey. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on our own dedicated feed on all podcast platforms and apps applicable. We're on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. I'm joined as always by my co-host, Case Lowe. Case, we are already through 2011 or 2010 in Dragon Gate.
Yes, the last show of 2010. I did not discuss this with Mike beforehand. I don't think, and I could be wrong, Mike, you can correct me. I don't think we need to do any year-end awards for the end of 2010 because I feel like the maybe not. The unanimous show of the year to me was Enter the Dragon, and the match of the year was Bryan Danielson versus Shingo Takagi. Mike, you might have a different show of the year, but I think our match of the year is the same. And so we are now through the first 18 months of Dragon Gate USA, and I will say this just briefly. I think the perception of the promotion is that, you have Open the Historic Gate and Open the Untouchable Gate, which are these historically great shows. And then, things are good in November, and then it begins to not be as good as you hit Fearless at the start of January 2010. But as we have finished this promotion after watching Freedom Fight 2010, the show we're discussing today, the booking has its moments where it's a little off, but I think the booking is still really good. I can follow almost everything that's happening. The matches are still very, very good. The only thing that's not there is the loud, passionate crowds from the first show. And the more we have gone on, the more I am confused about the lack of traction that this promotion was able to gain, because I mean, one of the Canada shows was really weird. The Phoenix shows weren't great, but it's not like these shows are bad. I am very confused by the business struggles the DGUSA has had up to this point.
Well, I think that it's also just touching on business thing. Indies weren't doing great here. I know you've been keeping track also of Ring of Honor at this time. They weren't exactly knocking it dead either.
That's true.
WWE is starting to slide a little bit, other than the fact that this time they firmly have cemented WrestleMania weekend as their thing. It's just one of those things that this is something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago on our weekly update when we were talking about the end of WWN. This is a promotion that, to my knowledge, never drew any money. It never was in the black. And it was bolstered by WrestleMania weekends. And their first WrestleMania weekend was not a strong WrestleMania weekend for them. And ever since then, having Bryan Danielson there certainly helped give him a shot in the arm for 2010. But I mean, you were looking at the place where I've been tracking this. They've been wanting to have 500 people a show. And then they went to 2 shows a weekend where they can get 700 and they break even. They've moved, and we talked about this, they've moved now having iPay-per-views. And it's just something that when this thing existed, it was a tough time for independent wrestling. I mean, when arguably the biggest independent promotion, the promotion that was doing the best, was Chikara, I would say at this time, at least business-wise. This is probably more of a tale about the overall, just wrestling marketplace than anything. I do think that, talking about best of 2010, my match of the year has to be Shingo Takagi versus Bryan Danielson. I mean, that was the only match that I know you went 5 on. It was the only match that I had the 5-star fear about. Where I differ, I think my show of the year was that Chicago show right after that, the one that had, I think it was Untouchable 2010, just because I absolutely loved Yamato versus Bryan Danielson. We had the best booking that Gabe Sapolsky ever did, the best rocket ship I think he's done in any of his promotions, with the elevation of Ricochet. Then you also had an incredible Dragon Kid versus Shingo Takagi match and a fun street fight. So that's my show of the year, 2010.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. If it wasn't Enter the Dragon for me, it would be Untouchable 2010. I think the Philly anniversary show into that Midwest double shot is a really special cluster of shows there. So if you haven't seen those at this point, I would highly recommend it. Mike, are you ready to get into Freedom Fight 2010?
Yeah, but just before we go, because of the time of the year, we kind of consulted. We do have a note here, and then we're going to get into the show. And then our longer timeline, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the wrestling world we're going to do after this review. It's just felt inappropriate, and it would give us a 2-hour-long timeline if we were going to do this on the next episode, because there's going to be a long break between this show and the first shows of 2011. So I believe you had one thing you wanted to touch on before we got started.
Yes, there's a long break between this show and the start of 2011, and the Dragon Gate landscape is completely different at the start of 2011. So going chronologically, we'll talk about Freedom Fight, which happened on October 30th, 2010. And then we have a plethora of timeline stuff for November and December of that year. And then when we start fresh in January of 2011, like I said, the Dragon Gate universe just looks completely different. But the one note we have, which is not super consequential in the grand scheme of things, but it's a note from the Dragon Gate USA Newswire on September 29th. And Mike, we just talked about the business end of Dragon Gate USA. These shows, this show in particular, drew somewhere between 250 and 300 fans. And as we'll talk about as we go along, it's a loaded show in some aspects, and they were failing to sell these buildings out or even really draw respectable crowds at points. So I just have this note here. And the specific verbiage that I will pull out of it, or at least emphasize, is the September 29th Newswire, when Gabe Sapolsky notes, open the Dreamgate champion Masato Yoshino versus and has been signed for the first main event of the October 30th show in Rahway, New Jersey. This will be the first of several main events for this card. Now, do I think it's a big deal that Gabe Sapolsky is saying there's going to be multiple main events on a show like this? No, I do not. But I have read every single Newswire note up to this point, and yes, we made fun of him for, it's not the dark matches, it's the bonus matches, and there's a difference. And if you sit in the golden circle, you have access to these sorts of things. But Gabe is very clearly, I think, in this newswire, concerned about drawing, and it is the first time that I think he is explicitly diving into what we will later make fun of him for, the dream match and the main event number 2 and main event number 3. This is the first true instance of that, I think.
Yeah, and we talked about this a bit on the last show. He was offering some crazy deals for this, like 40% off a second first row seat if you already buy one, when he said in 2019 that he was not going to do ticket deals. So
yes,
we've seen both in his promotion and both in the business side, he's, I don't want to say floundering, but he's reacting to the new reality of how things are, and that some conceptions he had in 2009 turned out not to be true.
And with that note, Mike, I am ready for Freedom Fight 2010. Are you?
I am dead ready for Freedom Fight 2010. So when we talked about the weird time break here, this show was taped on October 30th, 2010. It would not air until the middle of January, which
brutal.
Huge time skip. I'm pulling up the exact date here on Cage Match. So this show would air on January 7th, and the Untouchable show airs after this. So the Untouchable show that happened all the way back in September airs in the middle of November, and then 3 weeks after Freedom Fight, which they confusingly call that one Freedom Fight 2011. There's no other Freedom Fight. There is later a Freedom Fight 2011. So
yes,
so Gabe makes this really confusing here. But Freedom Fight 2010 takes place in Rahway, New Jersey at the Rahway Rec Center on October 30th, 2010. We do have some dark matches, the bonus card, as you put it, before we get into the show itself. The first one was Rip Impact versus Derek Rise. Impact won in 4 minutes. And in what I'm assuming is a 6-way freestyle, at least looking at this on Cage Match, had Sami Callihan defeat Amasis, Caleb Conley, someone who we'll be seeing a lot more of soon, Cheech, Ophidian, and Silas Young in 11 minutes and 30 seconds. And that was the sole matches on the bonus card. And getting into the show itself, the show opens up with Jimmy Jacobs coming into the ring at the Rahway Rec Center, which I have to say, this was a terrible facility for the show for his match against Eric Cannon. He would defeat Eric Cannon in 12 minutes and 12 seconds with the end times.
Yeah, the venue is no good, and I guess it doesn't matter because he's not drawing people anyways, but you look at the similar sized crowd the night before in Massachusetts, in a building that didn't look like it could hold many more people than that, and it had a balcony and everybody was kind of crammed in there, and it looked really nice on camera. The venue for Freedom Fight just feels spacious and empty and daunting, and I am not a fan of it. And then as for the Jacobs versus Eric Cannon match, the night before, Jacobs cut a promo about how he was going to wrestle and he wasn't going to bleed anymore and he wasn't going to jump off stuff. And then they booked him against Eric Cannon, which seems counterproductive. And it's not necessarily a shot at Eric Cannon. I mean, I am very intrigued to watch how Cannon evolves on this promotion as we go along, because he's never really been one of my guys. I don't really like his IWA Mid-South stuff, which some people are really into. The DUF stuff, which it's not in existence yet. I'm foreshadowing, but I don't know how much that holds up. This match was fine. I mean, Jimmy Jacobs does get busted open on some headbutts by Eric Cannon, which they related to the Moxley match from the night before, which actually I liked quite a bit. I think this is my general thought on most Eric Cannon matches. Most of the matches not that interesting, but he has a really quality finishing stretch in him. He's got about 90 seconds to 2 minutes that are really, really good, and I thought that was the case here as well.
I'm going to take the other side. I like Eric Cannon a lot. I think I've talked about this before. I've watched him a lot in Chikara. I always found him to be like someone that, this is an interesting promotion for him, and I know that's something that in the reports people were thinking that he was kind of out of, did not fit the promotion, but I went 3.5 stars on this. I thought this was a lot of fun, and I felt like that this was a really fun opener. Of course, like, you can't do anything about the fact that he just gets busted, his cut reopens. Like, he made that a point of promo. I guess he would have loved it that he wouldn't have that cut busted open, but I can't really slight him for that. And then There's were like little moments in this match that I enjoy. Like there was a corner exploder that Cannon hit on Jacobs that looked like it sucked. And for like a weird crowd, this is a crowd, and this is Gabe's only show that he does in Rahway, at least for DGUSA. Evolve runs in the Rahway Rec Center a lot at this time. This crowd goes nuts for this, and it's kind of dead for other parts during the show. I don't know if that came across to you, guys, but like the crowd was really into it, and I thought this was a pretty smart finish with Jimmy Jacobs getting the end times and starting his elevation up the card. But the venue sucked. Like when you looked at it from the hard cam, you would see like the entranceway would have like a nice dark scrim on it, and you would have like the tunnel that they come out of, the screens would be okay. But then as soon as they would go to any sort of floor cameras, or when they would zoom out the hard cam, you would see that, like, I know Lanza and Rich hate this, but you'd see exposed basketball nets, and it just became like a real big shit show there.
Yeah, the exposed hoops, certainly a factor at the Rahway Rec Center. For Jacobs Cannon, it was not bad. It was not bad. I thought it was aggressively fine. Gentleman's 3 stars from me.
That's fair. After that match, we had our first promo from Ronin. Chuck Taylor had a very wild t-shirt on that I don't think he'd be wearing in 2020. Gargano was mostly the person on mic for this, basically like talking about the big trick they pulled on CIMA and how much he looked forward and how glad he was to kick him in his stupid head. And I thought that, considering how Gargano was here and how Gargano would portray himself as a heel later, not some of his stronger stuff, Chuck pulled the promo back together, focusing on Warriors match that was coming on later, and then Rick Swann said Ronin baby for the first time, which is probably the biggest thing to take out of this promo, to be honest.
Yes, did not notice the Chuck Taylor shirt until I just now am looking at the footage of it. Knowing Chuck Taylor, I'm assuming he's wearing this out of irony, but probably not something in his closet anymore.
It's like a big dog shirt.
Yeah, it says, I don't know exactly what the image is supposed to be, but it does say, I'm an American, I have the right to own a gun, and then it is a scary-looking man that looks like he has a rifle draped across his lap, which is scary. As for this promo and every other promo on the show, not really a fan of it. I thought this was an off night for promos, and I didn't think this Ronin one was all that great.
Yeah. I thought the Chuck aspect of it was a lot better, which is something that, obviously the focus will be on Gargano as we talk about this series, as Gargano kind of becomes the guy. But Chuck Taylor has already proven to be a solid promo. Why would you have Johnny cut the lion's share of it here?
Mike, I think as we go along with this series, we need to, I'm genuine when I say this, we need to make an honest effort to watch the shifting trends of the Ronin members to see if we can pinpoint where exactly Gabe Sapolsky is sick of Chuck Taylor shit. Now, I'm a huge Chuck Taylor fan. I think he's misused he's been misused basically everywhere with the exception of a brief time in Chikara, and I think his role in AEW is perfect for him now. I don't think Gabe really ever liked the guy. I think he just felt like he had to book him because he had some buzz. But as we'll go along tonight, I think Rich Swann really elevates his stock both as a promo and as a wrestler. Gabe obviously loves Gargano. I'm afraid things are only going to get worse for our friend Sexy Chucky T.
That is fair to say. And then right after that, we got our next match of the night. This was the tag team that came together for one night only, the biggest tag team ever on the North American Independence, as Gabe called it the night before. Brodie Lee versus Akibono. Brodie Lee wins in 2 minutes and 49 seconds with a big boot. And Casey, you take the floor here because I have some thoughts I'm going to say at the end here.
This was like a bad 1980s All Japan match.
Oh, fuck, you're right.
There was a ref bump. There were chair shots. And Akibono kicked out at 2. And the referee just counted 3 anyways.
Yes.
It was like Riki Choshu was playing politics here. I mean, it was just a disaster of epic proportions. Akibono was someone this. I went to the Voices of Wrestling Slack, and we tried to figure out what the best Akibono match of all time is. And if you have what you think is a really good Akibono match, please tweet me at _InYourCase and let me know, because he seems like a genuinely nice guy out of the ring, but I have never seen an Akibono match that I've even thought was good, quite honestly. And this Brodie Lee match continues that trend. Thank God it was only 2 minutes, but it was an abysmal 2 minutes at that.
Case is not a fan of the Cho veterans.
No, sir.
The best part of this match was how great Akibono's theme is.
That is true. I will give him that.
Akibono's theme rules in this. Awkward brawling. Like, this is... like, when you said 1980s, the thing that popped in my mind immediately was, have you ever seen the Antonio Inoki versus the Great Antonio match?
I have.
Kind of reminded me of that in some ways when you brought that up, because that was not very of this. It just was awkward. It definitely looked like Akibono got his shoulder up at 2, but Bryce signaled for the bell anyway. And a quick cut to the backstage after this.
The quickest cut to the back, because it kind of cuts off Chikara-san's voice.
Yes.
There was some bullshit chant or something that was going on during the live crowd that was cut for the DVD broadcast, because that was
for the pay-per-view.
Yes, because that was the most aggressive cut to the back. I mean, that was a TNA Russo era to the back that there ever was in Dragon Gate USA.
Just wild. Yeah, this is, unless you want to watch weird things, you can go find better use of 10 minutes in your time. Like, it's not as bad as the stuff that was happening at Mercury Rising 2010, but it's in the lowlights of Dragon Gate USA in 2010. We go to backstage in that quick cut as Sami Callihan can't get the chance he deserves. That's all I wrote down for this. He probably said something else. I zoned out because it was Sami Callihan.
God, he's so cheesy. It's too much. I hate it.
Yeah. And then we went back to, was this a match that was billed as a main event case? I'm going to ask you this throughout the show. Which ones of these matches were billed as main events?
God, that's such a great question, Mike. I mean, in 2010, I don't really think it's fair to call anything a main event if it involves Homicide. But if you look at the October 25th, 2010 DGUSA Newswire, main event number 2, tag team attraction, BB Hulk and Homicide versus Jon Moxley and Akira Tozawa.
So I'm 1 for 1 in calling out Gabe's main event anywhere. I'm not going to look at any of the news wires going through. I'm just going to guess whenever he calls something a special main event.
It's something we are going to keep track of.
Yep. So I'm writing this in my notebook that I have for this. 1 for 1 in main events. We will keep track of this just like we're keeping track with the Cardinal Sins. It'll be a fun thing to discuss when the series is over. But this one was billed as a main event. It was the Kamikaze USA team of Jon Moxley and Akira Tozawa versus the World 1 team of BB Hulk and Homicide. I'm actually kind of sad that Homicide's is going to be gone soon after this, because that's such a fun thing to say. World 1 team, BB Hulk and Homicide. Hulk pinned Tozawa with the FTX in 13 minutes and 31 seconds. And Case, I know we kind of talked about this last week, but what a pair of teammates here.
Did you find Homicide to be weirdly over in this match?
Well, yeah, it's New Jersey.
They're all trash people. That makes sense. I mean, I like Homicide, but New Jersey is just another story. But no, Homicide comes out, and it's the largest pop on the show. To that point, I think it's sustained. I mean, people were all about Homicide in Rahway, New Jersey. The teams here, I mean, BB Hulk and Homicide, it's interesting. They represent kind of two distinct subgenres of hip-hop. BB Hulk very into the break dancing and the glitz and the glamour of sort of a dance-infused hip-hop. Homicide, from the streets, loves New York hip-hop. I'm not turning this into an episode of Art School Albums, but I was wondering, what do these guys talk about? And
oh, absolutely.
I think breakdancing might be the answer. More power to them. And then Moxley and Tozawa. I mean,
two lunatics.
Just a team I wish we had a year of on tape of them going around the globe and just tormenting people. I mean, I really liked what they did here. Tozawa makes a great partner for Moxley, and I thought Tozawa and BB Hulk were excellent against one another. But the Mox Tozawa tag team specifically, I mean, I really wish we had 12 months of them going from territory to territory and just wrecking fools.
I would want to have a Wrestling Road Diaries of the two of them. And I assume Mox seems like a Trans Am kind of guy. Would you say so?
Look, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I will say a Mox and Tozawa Wrestling Road Diaries feels like it involves a lot of nudity.
And not just a lot of, if you've watched the Ricochet Best Friends thing, Probably lots of Tozawa nudity while we're at it.
Specifically Akira Tozawa nudity.
I'm just imagining now them, going on I-10, traveling to Southeast, Moxley chain smoking, and Akira Tozawa is just naked in the car. Just naked in the car.
Yeah, I think that's Mike, I think we've nailed this visual.
Yeah. And then the thing that I loved about this, the chemistry with Hulk and Homicide, they did not have bad chemistry for like one match only. Like the two of them worked together. Homicide was very pleased that World 1 had a hand gesture that he could throw up on his way out there and immediately act like he was going to smoke one too. So like it weirdly worked between these two teams, and this was like a fun tag match.
It was good. It's not one of those that I'll be revisiting. I don't really think it's a hidden gem because, Homicide was better here because he could brawl with Moxley, and they did a lot of that in this match and then after the match as well. This was, to me, completely carried by the Tozawa-Mox chemistry and charisma, and then the chemistry between Hulk and Tozawa. It felt like a Road to match. It felt like an undercard Korakuen match with some big names on it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of room for that in Dragon Gate USA. Just, it's tough because I understand the purpose of a match like this happening, and I didn't have an issue with it, and I didn't need it to be great. But yeah, it was just kind of there. I went 3.25 stars on it. Again, it was fine. But as a match like this that is clearly building towards something, but given the fact that it wasn't great, is it selling tickets? I do not know if in 2010, 2011, people were going, we're seeing the bigger picture here. And I think that is unfortunately just an unfortunate part of independent professional wrestling is that sometimes you just have to be so immediate and direct with your stories, whereas in Japan, things are a little more spaced out. It's a little easier to see where things are going, and it's a little bit easier to follow the journey. And I think Hulk and Homicide versus Mox and Tozawa is just a part of that journey.
Yeah, no. When we're talking about Tozawa and Moxley, you do kind of get a little bit of that last year with Hulk and Shota. Oh, not Hulk, sorry. Moxley and Shota Umino. So there is a bit of that there. Yeah, I went 3.25 on this as well. I felt like that this is kind of the show, at least in DGUSA, where Tozawa kind of like tapped into who he was and who he would be for the remainder of his time in the United States. And we'll get into one like the big cornerstone Tozawa in the America matches after the show review. But he seemed to be like getting it a little bit, and I feel like that maybe like working with someone like Moxley, who's a very expressive person, maybe rubbed off on them as well. And it was like a fun finish. Like I thought I liked the FTX a lot more than the EVO and the EVOP. So I thought using that as the finish was kind of cool. But then we get into the post-match stuff, which I hate.
Yes, a lengthy... Well, I will talk about the brawl, because I think stuff happened before then, but I can't say for sure. I don't have it in my notes. But it ended up being a lengthy brawl between Moxley and Homicide, where at one point they brawled into the crowd, and it was so dark that my screen was just black. I just could not see a thing. And then, I don't mind, and I think Homicide, it's kind of a Homicide Eddie Kingston thing that I don't necessarily like, but I also don't mind it. I think I respect it, if anything, of like, they do this big brawl, and then Moxley specifically targets the arm of Homicide, and Homicide goes into some really over-the-top yelling, selling, which, again, it seems like a thing that I've seen Kingston do a million times, which, again, not totally my thing, but I respect it. I see what they're trying to do. It was a fine brawl. It was so long in the tooth. It just didn't need to be that long.
But before this, Moxley cut a promo that we couldn't really hear. Great production there. Where the only thing I made out of it is that he's been fighting at the fence since he was 12. Like that was the one quote I have. And then
it sounds like something Moxley would say.
Yeah, and then Yamato attacked Hulk, and that took out Hulk, and then the referees noticeably took the two of them to the back, and then they had this brawl, which the crowd was dead for. Considering how hot the crowd was for Homicide, the crowd went dead for this case. Like, remarkably so, and you couldn't see most of it, and I'm just stunned, and I'm somewhat offended that this was put on pay-per-view. Just because you could not see a good 5 minutes of this.
Yeah, again, just too long, poor production. Why they don't have a light on their camera, I do not know. This plagued them in Chicago. It plagues them here in New Jersey. I don't understand. I don't understand how this is a consistent issue with them now.
And it's something that would be a problem with WWN throughout its tenure. They would never light things well. The sound quality would be terrible at times. And this, I guess, is more of an offense thing for me because they decided that this 10 to 15 minute thing on a 2 hour and 15 minute pay-per-view, that this should go this long. And it could have been something where they were told, okay, brawl for like 3 to 5, and they went 10 instead. But this thing wasn't live on pay-per-view. They had this back, and they sent the tape over to the providers and the distribution company. How this made TV and how this made terrestrial taped pay-per-view, I think, is offensive. Like, it's just something that on a show that's this short, you can't see or hear anything, and then you suddenly hear Homicide screaming because he's working his arm, which, that's fine. I know Homicide and Kingston are guys that like that kind of style of Memphis Southeast selling of now you have the thing that in a big crowd brawl to build upon, but everything leading up to it and then still brawling after that until a bunch of geeks pulled Mox off there was a terrible thing to put on pay-per-view case. It's terrible.
I agree, Mike. It is terrible.
And then we had a promo with Aries, Ricochet, and Kiki Horiguchi. It was just
also
Aries.
Not great. Also not great.
Also not great either, where Aries says that he's going to pay them all, make them all pay the price for what they did over this, and for one day he'd be a Warriors member. That's it.
Do Ricochet, Genki Horiguchi, and Austin Aries, other than their profession, do they have one thing in common between the three of them?
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, Horiguchi seems like such a delightful human. Ricochet and Austin Aries are both unlikable, but in different ways.
Oh, entirely
which is
different
really,
ways.
yeah, it's interesting because Ricochet seems like the dude, if he wasn't famous, he would have a lot of pictures of his car in like a sepia tone, like that would be his social media presence. And then Austin Aries is talking about wet pennies and whatever else on his social media platforms. We all have a voice and we can all use it, and Austin Aries chooses to use his voice in just astounding ways at times.
I'm wondering what's the last thing that Austin Aries tweeted, Case. I'm just interested right now.
Well, I know he was a coronavirus hoax person for a while. I don't know where he is currently standing on the pandemic that is wreaking havoc across the world. It looks like he's talking about stem cell therapy. That makes sense. That's a big Austin Aries thing. That just tracks. His facial hair, even for being a professional wrestler, is still absurd. And it looks like Austin Aries did a podcast recently, and the description is to discuss why he's all in when it comes to stem cell therapy, what the COVID-inspired masks are really covering. Aries still anti-COVID, that a boy. His new political party, his thoughts on the future of live sports post-COVID, and more. Love it.
I'll see if anyone I know might listen to that and tell me how wild he is, because I'm not wasting my time, but that sounds very Austin Aries.
Joe Gagny Podmass, fire it up, brother.
Yeah, Joe Gagny, come on. We need to know what happens there. After that, we had Case. Was this another listed main event?
This indeed was another listed main event.
2 for 2.
Mike, main event number 3. Do you want to guess what the tagline for main event number 3 was? And think deep into the recesses of your mind that is fluent in Gabe Sapolsky.
First time in America.
Close. Special challenge match.
So main event special challenge.
Yes, main event special challenge, because Mike, this is not the first time this match happened in America.
This can't be first time ever.
No, not first time ever, but also not the first time in America. They wrestled, just their history as we get into it. Leading up to this match, they had wrestled 3 times, once in 2004 that I don't believe was televised, which is a damn shame. Once at the Battle of Los Angeles.
Oh, that's right.
In 2007.
Yeah.
And then once at Gate of Destiny 2007. CIMA won all of those matches. CIMA would win here. And then their next 2 singles matches, Kobe World 2013 and Final Gate 2015, maybe the most infamous CIMA singles matches there are. And he lost both of those to Shingo Takagi. Mike, what do you think of this match, though?
I think that when you compare, it's interesting because I don't remember that Bola match. And if I don't remember that Bola match, that tells me that it wasn't great, to be honest.
That's a lot of Bola 2007. It's stuff that looked good on paper.
Right.
It was okay.
And then, of course, I wouldn't have been able to see the 2004 match. If I managed to pull that one out, case, then we'd have other questions about me. But this was worse than the two other ones, but not much worse than the Kobe World 2013 match, in my opinion.
Yes.
I went 3 1/4.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I went 3 3/4. I liked it. I think these two, I mean, the Final Gate 15 match is just a masterpiece of professional wrestling, and it's nowhere near that. It's not great. It's very good, and I think there is a clear distinction in that difference where I never really felt like this match was really getting somewhere. I mean, there are big moves, and CIMA kicks out of basically all of Shingo's big moves in this match, which I found to be very interesting. And then I thought the finish was satisfying to me, but it was missing something, and I can't exactly put my finger on it. I mean, to me, the opening grappling was a little lingering and just uninspired. But normally these two can make up for that with just their incredible flurries of offense, and that never really happened here. But again, I went 3 3/4. I thought it was very good.
For the reasons you've listed, also the crowd was completely dead during this.
Yes, strangely dead, especially given the reaction Homicide got.
Yeah, completely dead audience here. This match, I did not look at the timing before I watched the show. I thought this match went like 23 minutes. Like, this match felt like it went forever, and a lot of that was that opening grappling thing that, you know, did a Dreamgate-style opening grappling thing, and when you have a dead crowd, it doesn't help. And then, something you did not mention is that CIMA really botched the Tokarev somersault dropkick that he does, the springboard one leading into the finish. That was supposed to be the last big move before the Meteora. And then he tried to make it look better by throwing a punch to the back of Shingo's skull, but the camera was in a way that you could tell that he whiffed completely. And that just, like, this was a match that probably knocked it down a 1/4 star for me, like how bad the finish was in my mind.
Yeah, so, for whatever reason, it registered with me, but it didn't bother me. It was just like, that's a shame they messed that up. But it didn't affect my enjoyment of the match. But I totally see how it would for most people.
Yeah, no. And, you know, I feel like that 2015 match still is CIMA's best singles match of all time. And these guys, as proven through that match, would have that chemistry. Just at this point, this was the wrong match for the wrong crowd, and they weren't on. So, and also have CIMA kicking out of everything.
Well, and, I mean, from what we know about CIMA and Shingo, it's not necessarily surprising that CIMA didn't want to lay down for any of Shingo's big moves.
Or say no, just say okay, kick out of this, and not calling the match after like kicking out of the Stage Dream or kicking out the Bloodfall, which usually is a big kick out in Shingo's matches. I don't remember very many matches he won at the Bloodfall. Kicking out of Made in Japan, kicking out of Original Falconry, kicking out of DVD, kicking out of a really good looking Pumping Bomber.
Why do you think CIMA would do that, Mike?
Well, it is known much later. When I say much later, I'm talking about 2019, when Shingo Takagi left Dragon Gate and went independent for approximately 24 hours before Kadani knew about this.
I was just thinking about that brief, like, summer of 2018 when we knew Shingo was going to leave, and it was like, oh my god, he's going to go to Big Japan and All Japan, and he'll do stuff there. And I was trying to get US Indies to book him. I was reaching out to companies to be like, hey, have you heard anything about Shingo? And then he just showed up in New Japan and became one of the most beloved wrestlers on the planet, rightfully so, mind you. But there was that real period of like, Shingo's going to leave Dragon Gate. He's going to go all over the world. It's going to be awesome. Not so much.
And we don't know specifics, and I don't think we ever will, and because I don't think this is something that... Okay, I'll say one thing here that I've known for a couple of years, that I know I've talked to you about this case. I think you know what I'm referring to it, because the two of them, after Shingo was leaving Dragon Gate, did appear on some North American cards together. They were at Battle Los Angeles, and have been told through the grapevine that there was an incident backstage where people were asked Shingo where CIMA was, and Shingo said, don't know where they are, don't ask me again. So that would continue something that there was a breakdown between these two. I don't know if the breakdown was already starting to happen in 2010, but I do know that by the time that both of them left Dragon Gate, and still to this day, there is a huge disdain for each other.
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm pretty sure I heard this, but I'm not locked in. But I believe I remember either CIMA gave an interview and said this, or Shingo gave an interview and claimed CIMA said this, that CIMA at one point feared handing over the reins of Dragon Gate to Shingo Takagi because CIMA said something along the lines of, your wrestling style will kill this company.
Oh no, that I remember exactly what you're referring to. There was an interview that was done that Shingo and Tozawa tweeted about this publicly.
Yes.
About this happened, and it was remember the style of we did not want to leave the dojo, did not want to leave the company to you, for the excess reason that their two ideologies of wrestling were so distinct, and CIMA is so set in his, as we've seen since then, that did not work. That the two were oil and water, and went from a point where CIMA and Shingo was brought into CIMA's junior as his protege. He was the last member of Crazy Max. A lot of people forget that, but Shingo was technically a member of Crazy Max for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, we'll eventually do a Dragon Gate conspiracy theory episode, and Mike and I have a ton of thoughts on the training of Shingo Takagi because there's a ton of rumors that are out there. But for a long time, the faces, at least to Western crowds, the faces of Dragon Gate were CIMA and Shingo, and that was because slightly they were attached at the hip, and it seemed like they had a good relationship, but we don't know where it went awry. I had completely forgotten about the Bola 2018 stuff, but you're right. I remember hearing a lot of uncomfortable tension because, I mean, I've complained about it, but most American indie wrestlers don't know what's happening in Dragon Gate, and maybe they were a little confused, but I remember there being a lot of uncomfortable tension in the Bola locker room because of CIMA and Shingo. So it's unfortunately a very real issue that, because of the nature of Shingo seemingly being so firm in New Japan and Strong Hearts just being unable to find a home in Japan, I don't think their paths are going to cross. So any sort of resolution is going to have to come outside of the locker room, and I just don't know if that'll ever happen. And we bring it up because it's relevant to the current state of the company, and a little bit like we talked about when we had Jay on the podcast last month, of just the changing state of the locker room. And we are in a completely new era of the company, and I'm sure 5-6 years from now we'll hear stuff about, these two guys had real issues in 2019 and 2020, but we don't have any inklings of that right now. It seems like it is once again a co-op operation, that it is, in some weird way, a one big happy family. And I think that was the presentation that was given a lot of the time during the CIMA and Okamura regime, and as time has gone on, that has proven not to be the case. So any singles match between the two, and there's 5 of them out there and 4 of them on tape, I look for those sorts of things of, a cheap shot here or there, or just their chemistry, because it's very clear that they have real life issues with one another.
Yeah, and if there's anything to discern from here, I would say that this was a lot more like matches that CIMA would have where he would eat someone's lunch and kick out their things and make them look like crap. And for someone like Shingo Takagi, who, for a lot of people, especially at this time, Shingo has kind of re-entered the Western consciousness in an awesome way.
It's beautiful to see. I really enjoy the fact that so many people are into Shingo.
But and I really hate doing the experience card here, but it's something that I look at everything, and I think you're right. I look at this at a very big wide view, at least with Dragon Gate and the West. For about a 2-year period, Shingo was the banner waver in the West for Dragon Gate, and during his excursion in Ring of Honor. So it's not like that Shingo is just some nobody, and other than this crowd being a piece of shit, the crowd would know who Shingo Takagi is. I mean, Shingo Takagi won the Wrestling Observer Rookie of the Year award back before really Dragon Gate cards were really getting up there high on that. I mean, other than the initial thing of, oh god, Torimon's insane, we're going to give Dragon Kid the Dragon Rana move of the year for 3 years in a row. There was a time that they went like this, and then they re-entered the Western consciousness, and in a lot of ways, these two men were the two banner wavers. They're the two people that embodied that here. And we had what I still think is a very weird match, and a match that sadly, out of that series, is probably the third worst.
One final note on not even this match, but just on one of the participants in it. Mike, I don't know if you noticed this, but I did. This is the last time we will see Shingo Takagi until WrestleMania weekend 2013.
Well, a lot of things are going to be happening that would have him be in Japan.
Yes, it's. I'm sure Shingo didn't hate the fact that he no longer had to fly to Rahway, New Jersey to work in front of a dead crowd.
Yeah, so we will say goodbye to Shingo Takagi. I'm going to look up how many shows he's gone for, because you say WrestleMania 13 and people could probably go, oh, wow, that's a good period of time. But this is on October 30th, 2010. He would not...
I was trying to do some mental math. I don't know if we will talk about him for the rest of 2020.
I don't think we will, because it's 30 shows. 30 shows. And they're about to get off the iPay-per-view, so that denotation is going to be legit. It's not going to be this. So there's about 28 shows. So yeah, no, we're not going to talk about him until 2021 on this series.
It's a damn shame, because I think Shingo was on every show from the inception to now and was consistently enjoyable on every single outing that he had.
Yeah, he might have been at least the Dragon Gate side MVPs, either him or Yamato, up to this point.
I would agree with that.
And now everyone take a moment to remember the Pumping Hawk, and we will see him in the future, but that will do it for him for the next 6 months of the series, at least. So, any other thoughts? We knew that we were going to talk a little bit about this match, a little bit about like the overall environment about it. Did you have anything else about it you wanted to touch on before we move on?
No, Mike, what happened after the match?
Well, Shima grabbed the microphone, and the audio quality here was terrible, but it was a Shima promo where he thanks everyone for their support in 2010, and he said that they would return in 2011, and they'll be returning to New Jersey in 2011, not here in New Jersey. They'll be going, I think, to Union City. And they said that there will be a tournament to crown the United Gate champions. It's been a while, but it's time for them to crown a new set of champions.
Yeah, I'm very excited about what's to come. I love Dragon Gate tag team wrestling. I think it's the best style of wrestling there is. There's nobody I want introducing a title more than Shima. He seems to love the idea of it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and that will be what we're going to be covering on the next 4 weeks of the series, pretty much. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with them deciding a United Gate champion. What does not decide a United Gate champion is the next match, which is Sami Callihan versus Shane Smalls. Sami wins in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Very rare on these shows that we have 2 squashes on them, but this is a show that has 2 of them. And yeah, he wanted the stretch muffler.
Yes, this is the introduction of Sami Callihan to the main cards, and we will have to deal with him basically from here on out. I thought the stretch muffler that he won the match with looked great. Shane Smalls, who was a Kentucky wrestler who passed away in 2018, he did one thing in this match that I don't think I had ever seen before and I really liked, which is that he stood on the chest of Sami Callihan and then did a standing shooting star press, which was really cool. I don't think I had ever seen that, but it was a squash. And, you know, Callihan at this point, firmly a CZW guy, he was either booking NWA Force 1 at this point or was about to begin booking NWA Force 1 at this point and needed to take that next step, needed some legitimacy, had been used and evolved but hadn't really made a name there. Him being on Dragon Gate USA became a big step for Sami, and we will slowly see the evolution of what was to come for a guy that, I mean, he's been everywhere, good or bad. Sami Callihan has been everywhere, and I think this is the start of a turning point in his career.
I think like the wild thing about that and about him is that really at this time, like he was based in New Jersey, I think, because he was mainly doing CZW at this time.
Yes,
and this was like his big step up, at least to like a larger kind of audience. Something that I did not know about Shane Smalls, I did not know he passed away, but his trainer, same trainer as Chuck Taylor, Brandon Walker.
That you know what, the Kentucky school, when you pump out Shane Smalls, Chuck Taylor, Ricochet, you're not doing too bad.
I would say not too badly at all. After that, we went to the back for another promo, and this is Jimmy Jacobs. And as you said earlier, not a strong promo night for most people. He says folks have been underestimating him, but his comeback is incomplete. He wants to until he wins the singles championship, and this is now the road for him to get his Freedom Gate title.
It was fine.
It was fun. I mean, out of all the promos on the show, the backstage stuff, this was probably the best one. But it was not like a special Jimmy Jacobs promo, to be fair. Now, I don't think this match was a main event.
I would agree with that. I think the one he cut the night before was much better. No, the following match, at least on the newswire I have pulled up, not a main event.
Well, you would only have 24 hours to declare it the fourth main event. So
yes, that is correct.
But
which he has done in the past, but not on this show.
Not on the show. He gets crazy with the news wires as he goes along, but not at this point yet. This was Ronin's in-ring debut. Chuck Taylor, Johnny Gargano, and Rich Swann defeating the Warriors International team of Genki Horiguchi, Ricochet, and for one night only, Austin Aries in 21 minutes and 13 seconds with a Gargano Hurts donut on Ricochet. And what I thought was the match of the night.
Yes. Yes to that. What do you think, before we even talk about the match, the aesthetic of Ronin, or lack thereof, what did you think of that? Because yes, this match came together in only 24 hours, but I don't know. I wanted more pizzazz from the Ronin debut, just from their looks.
Yeah, I mean, they would get a look and they would get more coherent as it goes along, especially as we get to 2011. But it did definitely feel like three distinct guys teaming for the first time.
At least in terms of their look, because I don't know about you, Mike. I thought in the ring, these three, Taylor, Gargano, Swann, for their first time teaming together in a trios match, had a stupid amount of chemistry. I could not believe how good they looked as a team, specifically the Gargano middle rope spear into Chuck Taylor hitting a lion salt, into Rich Swann hitting a top rope frog splash. That combo right there, I think, was grossly misused in this match, because it comes at about the halfway point when, to me, and I think in front of a hot crowd, that would have gotten a ginormous reaction, especially because that's the first time they do that, just, as a trio. And I think that should have led to the finish, because it looked so clean and so good. And there's just a lot of different moments in this match where Ronin is doing a double team or a triple team move, and I'm stunned that it's their first match together, because they look really, really good in the ring with one another.
Yeah, like that's the insane thing. Like the finishing stretch was insane. Like they murdered Ricochet every way possible.
The meanest super kick of Johnny Gargano's career. He cleaned Ricochet's clock with a super kick.
It just was like a really awesome match. It started off pretty low key. Genki Horiguchi cutting a rug, and that was kind of funny. And then Swann, like at this point, this would have been like my first big exposure to Swann, but Swann played such a great heel in this match. Like he was someone that got it to a certain extent. Like Chuck Taylor, I've seen him play heel before, and Johnny Gargano, if you want to read into it the way he wanted you to read into it, he was being incredibly insincere about how he was before. But Swann in this was incredible. Like Austin Aries was, for a guy in his position, gave up a lot to these guys and
specifically Swann. And as we go along, I am very curious. I don't know how often they're in the ring with one another after this, but I want more Aries and Swann stuff, because I thought they had really good chemistry. And to your point, I mean, Swann, he's 19 at this point. He's, I think, working CZW, but he's really in no major places. Didn't look super impressive with his debut match against Scott Reed at the anniversary show. I mean, it was clear there was talent there. And then he had, and to no fault of his own, had that abysmal match against Homicide the night before, and then comes out here and it's like, oh my God. I mean, if this is what he's capable of now, I would be saying in 2010, I can't wait to see how he progresses. And he is someone that, when he got signed by WWE in 2015 or 2016, I don't remember the exact year, but he was someone who, pound for pound, there were guys that were having a plethora of match of the year contenders that, you could say, okay, they're better wrestlers than Rich Swann. But in terms of accomplishing a task, doing what you went out there to do, and just being a great professional wrestler on a micro level, when I looked at him as one of the 10 to 15 best wrestlers in the world, and it is really enjoyable to see the foundation of that here as just a young guy that looked fearless, came across with so much charisma, and had so many great spots in this match. It was really cool to see him shine as brightly as he did.
Yeah, and it's something that I keep on going back to my comparison that I'm certainly going to completely bury 6 feet underground by the time I'm done with it. If Ricochet was the Elvis Andrus, and we already said that Uhaa Nation Apollo Crews is the Nefertali Feliz, is he the Matt Harrison of this trade? Because he ends up being a very solid wrestler for like that time period.
Briefly, and I say briefly, remind me of Matt Harrison's role in Major League Baseball.
Oh, he was the number 2 to number 3 on the Rangers during that time. He was always kind of like a solid baseball player, but he wasn't exceptional. Like, he was someone that got traded over to the Phillies as a member of the trade. I believe that was the God, which trade is that? I can't believe I'm blanking on this. Yeah, he was a part of the Cole Hamels trade.
Okay, all right. I will say that's okay for now. We might have to adjust our Uhaa and our Swan positioning at some point, but that is not a move I am ready to make at this part of the show.
He was a 2012 All-Star as well, Matt Harrison.
Damn, okay, I gotta look at his baseball reference when we're done, because I'm drawing a blank on who Matt Harrison is. If he's a 2012 All-Star, okay, that's fine. That fits Rich Swan. We can move along with the show, my friend.
Yeah.
I went 4.25 stars for this.
Same here. This was a match that, on a show that I think is very skippable, if I was to get the power to put together a Road of Johnny Gargano documentary or DVD set when they would release it for WWE, now assuming that they have this library at the time of recording, this is a match I would put on there.
I think it is crucial to the careers of Taylor, Swan, and Gargano. I think if you're going to make any sort of best of comp that truly spans their career, this match has to be on there.
Yeah, it's worth going out of your way for. I know it's of course on WWN Live, but I don't know if they've put a copy of it up on the YouTube. It feels like something that they might have just because the name's involved, but they might not have. But this is a match worth going out of your way to go see.
Yeah, I have not seen this match for free anywhere. I believe it is only available on WWN Live.
Well, I mean, they're doing a sale for stuff. I would say that this match is
I wonder why.
Yeah, I would say that this match would be worth the $5 DVD for it. Just this match. I think this match is that interesting. Would you say so?
I completely agree. It's a six. I really like the fact that they're doing more 6-man tags, the fact that they're including Americans in them now. And yeah, it's just a super interesting match. I mean, Aries, Horiguchi, Ricochet as a team is just interesting, and Horiguchi doesn't really do a ton in this match. It's kind of on the backs of Aries and Ricochet, and then the Ronin side. Again, I think they missed something with the aesthetic just because we're so used to these strong Dragon Gate aesthetics. And one thing that I've always come back to in my mind as just a weird compliment for the promotion was I was talking with somebody on ProWrestlingOnly.com at one point. I don't remember who it was, but they were saying, you know, I don't really like Dragon Gate. I don't watch a ton of it, but I know who everyone on the roster is, because despite the fact that the units are so strong and everybody has a specific color scheme, everybody on the roster has some sort of different attire that makes them stand out. And that was something that I hadn't noticed up until this person had mentioned it to me. And I've always taken it with me in the back of my mind ever since. And I just feel like Ronin should have come prepared with some new gear or some matching gear or something, because yes, the match came together in 24 hours in story, but it wouldn't have bothered me had they realistically had gear prepared for this match. That's my only complaint with this.
Yeah, no, this is definitely something that was on the build, and especially in retrospect, now we look back at it, they definitely were building at least for Chuck Taylor and Johnny Gargano go down this route. It would have been nice. And they have gear in 2011, so that's something that's to look forward to. Post-match, we had a backstage promo with Jon Moxley where he said he knew he'd face Moxley, but he wasn't that tough. Or Moxley said he knew he'd face Homicide, but he wasn't that tough. And that, just like on the last line, it was right before Yamato went out as Yamato's spirit started playing during this theme, and he said he wanted to end the night on a positive note with Yamato winning.
Yeah, a promo that was just there, a rare Mox promo that didn't blow me away.
Yep. Then we had the main event, Masato Yoshino versus Yamato, and Masato Yoshino won this match. I don't have the finisher listed in my notes here, Case. I think it was he was able to do the Sol Naciente on this one. Yeah, Sol Naciente.
Yes. Yeah, I had in my notes that he choked him out with a Galleria, but that is obviously not correct. I did mean to write Sol Naciente. Mike, this was the main event of Kobe World 2010.
Yeah.
And on a show that featured this match and CIMA versus Shingo in a singles match, I understand that the way Japanese wrestling was viewed and really accepted was different in 2010. But if I was running this company and I only drew 300 people for a rematch between two pushed guys, mind you, it's not like, I mean, even Masaki Mochizuki at this point would be like, okay, he's been on a few shows, but Yoshino and Yamato are fixtures of the promotion at this point. A big singles match, a main event from the biggest Dragon Gate show of the year, and you only draw 300 people to this show. To me, that is very, very concerning.
Yeah, and these are two guys who've been on every single show. Every single show.
And have been very good on every single show.
Yeah, and they've been quantities of every other show. We'll get into Yamato's 2011 when it comes to it, but you have Masato Yoshino, the Open the Drink Gate champion here. You had Yamato, the rematch from Kobe World, which this match I thought was a lot worse than that Kobe World match.
Worse is not what I'd say. I actually thought it was very similar to the Kobe World match in the sense that I really wasn't into the first half of it.
Okay.
And then they have I kind of like what I alluded to earlier. They have very good finishing stretch chemistry with one another. I liked a lot of the counters. I love when Yamato counters the Sol Naciente with like a pinning combination. They do a lot of stuff that looks good against one another. It's just a matter of getting to that. I thought it was really, quite honestly, on the same level as the world match, just without the hot crowd.
And I think that's what killed it. I mean, like, I've already said, like, CIMA versus Shingo was killed by the crowd for me. This was a match that the grappling was something that would become almost to excess with these two in later matches they've had since then. But I liked it with that. I thought that Yoshino and the camera work actually here was really good for this match versus the CIMA and Shingo one. There were a couple moments here where, like, Yoshino did, like, a jumping baseball slide to, like, it was basically, I forgot what they call it. I think they called it the drive-by for Roman Reigns, but he does that. 6 years for Roman Reigns does it, and it's insane. And then, like, a really brutal Galleria. There was a lot of knee work early where Yoshino sold his knee in pretty smart places. Yoshino's a great seller, by the way.
Phenomenal.
Like, he's someone that I think that and especially if, like, Dragon Gate style, it gets kind of unfairly kind of put that they don't sell well and they don't do things correctly. But I like the way that, because, like, Yoshino, like, if you hurt your knee, unless, like, you completely blow it out, you're still able to move on your knee. But there's, like, moments where, like, he will, like, try to work out his knee and he would, like, wince through it, or he wouldn't feel like he got as much impact as he's supposed to. I thought that was great. And then, yeah, the finishing stretch was really great. A Galleria that Yoshino kicks out of looks absolutely brutal. And then the finishing stretch, like, you're absolutely right. These two guys had tremendous finishing stretch. I went 3.5 stars. Like, this is a match I still really enjoy, but when I compare it to the other matches, it falls flat.
I'm in the same boat. 3.5 for me. I looked at my review of Kobe World 2010 and went 3 3/4. I knew it wasn't quite on the level of that, so I went 3.5. I will also say, to your point about Yoshino selling and then him kicking out of the Galleria, my big talking point with Yoshino is that I think he has the best kick out at 2 of anybody I've ever seen in wrestling. Yoshino just has a way of milking it until the last 10th of a second, and then just sort of the bounce he does out of some pins. It's such a small thing that if you're a wrestler, I don't even know how you would practice this or get better at it. I think it's just instinctual. Yoshino knows how to kick out of moves.
Yeah, and the timing with the kickouts is what really sells it for me. Is like I know some people you can, like, watch them look at the referee with that, but it seems like with Yoshino it's instinctive the way he powers out.
I don't know what to do with this statistic because we are dangerously approaching the end of Masato Yoshino's career, But if you look at their all-time record against one another in singles matches, it's this match, it's Kobe World 2010, it's an October 2013 Dreamgate match in Korakuen Hall, and it is a June 2018 King of Gate match in Korakuen Hall. And Masato Yoshino has won all 4 of them.
Really? Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
because he won the Dreamgate from Yamato, that Korakuen.
Yeah, very, very good match. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I think one of those that has just been lost in the footage
Ether.
purges. Yeah, it's there's so much 2013 stuff out there that I would really like to get my hands on again, and that is one of those matches. But yeah, it seems crazy that the ace of the company and the ace of Dragon Gate and Yamato has never pinned the future probably president of the company, Masato Yoshino, in a singles match. It just, that stuck out to me here as I was doing my research. Again, I don't know what to do with that because I don't see a plan to get to Yoshino versus Yamato, but if it happens, something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, no. And I think that's part of it was Yoshino was always so protected. And Yamato, at least up until that King of Gate match, which was like the thing I think that knocked Yamato out of King of Gate that year. I mean, he was always the heel, and in the title matches that they had, I mean, the heel loses at Kobe World often, and then, he was not the Dreamgate champion. And this is the one place where they could have done that, especially considering what's going to happen in January. So, at least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, and then we had Yoshino doing what I would put as a 0.5 on the CIMA scale of a go-home promo with the Dragon Gate USA call. And that was it for the end of Freedom Fight 2010. After a long streak of tremendous shows and a couple weird ones, this was definitely a note to go out of 2010 on in Dragon Gate USA.
Is this the weakest Dragon Gate USA show up to this point?
It's either that or no. Yeah, I think it's weaker than the Canada shows. Yeah.
Yeah, the Canada shows had flaws, but they were fun in parts. I didn't think this show was that fun outside of the Ronin match. Even if CIMA versus Shingo and Yamato versus Yoshino were good, they were like clinically good. There was an element of DGUSA fun that just wasn't present on this show.
Well, I'm looking right now. Open the Northern Gate had Mochizuki versus Doi on that, and then the Takagi and Yamato versus Hulk and Pac.
And Shima Jacobs and Yoshino Dragon Kid, which I at least really, Shima Jacobs we both really liked. You somehow more than me. I thought I was going to be the high man on that. Yeah, no, Northern Gate is a flawed show, but again, like I keep going back to, a fun show. And then the other Canada show, Shingo and Yamato versus CK1, Doi and Pac versus the Chikara guys, Mochizuki, Tozawa, BB Hulk versus Yoshino. That's a better show than this.
Yeah, no, this is the worst show of the year. It may be the worst show in their history, to be honest.
At least up to this point, yes.
Yes. Unless you really heavily... You can't even do that for Mercury Rising, because even though you had that really shitty hour, you still had the World 1 versus Warriors 6-way tag where Gamma was the mayor of Phoenix.
Well, the other one that would need to be in the discussion, as we basically litigate every show from this year, is Fearless from January, which I did not have a match that cracked 4 stars on that show, and I had the 4.25 star with the Ronin tag here. But Davey versus Mochi at the 3-way tag and Hulk versus Dragon Kid were all enjoyable, albeit not what I would call great. I like Fearless more than this show. This show was just a little soul sucking in a way.
Fearless had Davey, so yeah, I'm going to go I'm saying Fearless is better because of Davey. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's it for that show, but we have a lot to talk about before we close the books on Dragon Gate and Dragon Gate USA in 2010 case. And there's a lot of things that are happening. This was a very big time, at least I felt like, in the year 2010.
Yeah, so we'll speed through some of this stuff just to give a landscape of what independent wrestling and Dragon Gate outside of Dragon Gate was looking like at the time. I'm going to start a little bit out of order, but because it kind of pertains to this show, November 20th, 2010, Evolve 6. Chuck Taylor and Austin Aries in the main event of a show that also featured Johnny Gargano versus Jimmy Jacobs, Ricochet versus Adam Cole, a relaxed rules match where Jon Moxley defeated Homicide, which plays into this show, Up in Smoke defeating the Super Smash Brothers, Bobby Fish defeating Kyle O'Reilly, AR Fox winning a four-way match that also featured Rich Swann, Scott Reed, and Tony Nese, and Silas Young defeating Drake Younger. Mike, any strong memories of Evolve 6?
I remember watching Up in Smoke versus Super Smash Brothers and Chikara, and that was a fun match. But I don't remember. I don't think I watched this Evolve show.
No, it's one of the few Evolve shows that I have not seen.
Yeah. No, I mean it's something where did that show also happen in Rahway?
It happened at the Ace Arena.
Yeah, they would move to Ace Arena in Union City after the show for their New Jersey shots.
Yes, which a venue that we'll discuss shortly. I've got some thoughts on that venue, but we'll discuss that a few episodes from now. To backtrack slightly to the beginning of November, we move to New Japan Pro Wrestling. On November 9th through November 13th, Masaki Mochizuki and Super Shisa competed in the New Japan Super J Tag League, which featured, and most of these matches were taped, and I know they're out there somewhere. I just do not have access to them, but they were all at different Ariake, and it features some really fun matches. Mochizuki and Shisa versus Jado and Gato, Akira and Kushida versus Mochizuki and Shisa, Koji Kanemoto and Tiger Mask 4 versus Mochizuki versus Shisa, and the final night of the tournament, Mochizuki, Shisa, and Satoshi Kojima against El Samurai, Jushin Thunder Liger, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Mike, first of all, have you seen these? And second of all, do you have a guess as to the finals, what the finals were of the Super J Tag League 2010?
Welcome to the Yuke's form of New Japan, everybody. This is... It's wild thinking that, like, within, 2 years of this, where New Japan would be. Like,
that's so true. We are at this point, basically a year out from Okada coming back.
We're a year out from Okada coming back. King of Pro Wrestling with Tanahashi and Minoru Suzuki is either just happened or is on the horizon. My dates are.
It's a year from now because that's 2012.
Yeah, one of my favorite.
So I guess 2 years.
One of my favorite matches in New Japan history. I don't remember watching these, and I try to remember because I try to imagine the El Samurai mask against Masaki Mochizuki, and I feel like that would be something that would peek in my head if I watch it, especially with how distinctive different Ariake was. But no, I don't watch it. Is this one that was won by Apollo 55?
No. The winners of this tournament were Gato and Jado.
Oh yeah, world-class tag team.
World-class tag team, and Mike, they defeated Rocky Romero and friend of the show, Davey Richards, in the finals.
Hell yeah, no remorse core in New Japan. Let's go.
And also, Davey and Mochizuki sharing locker rooms once again. It is truly a delightful thing.
Do you think that Jin had some opinions about this, like him sharing the locker room with that after he lost to him in Sapporo?
Man, I miss Davey so much. I can't believe we're going into shows that don't have Shingo and don't have Davey. I'm starting to regret this project.
I mean, we are approaching some interesting times in DGUSA for sure.
Yeah, I love 2011. I'm super excited to watch all of those shows. But as we continue to navigate now the independent scene, we have to go to PWG on December 11th, 2010. Cyanide, a loving tribute to Poison, a show that in the main event saw El Generico and Paul London defeat the Kings of Wrestling. Also on this show, Roderick Strong versus Chuck Taylor, Willie Mack versus Peter Avalon, and the important match on the show, the reason we mention it, Kevin Steen versus Akira Tozawa.
You know, I always threaten that when we get to a certain point, when we've run out of footage for a rewatch series, that we're going to do a Tozawa in America thing, because this match, oh my god, is insane. Because this was right around Christmas time at the Legion Hall. They had a Christmas tree up with presents that I guess were just decorating the hall. And then they started attacking each other with presents in the middle of it. This is truly when Akira Tozawa turned into an absolute psychopath. It was so much fun. And then this led up to the person that he'd be linked to for the remainder of his time. And and PWG and in his appearances afterwards, and Kevin Steen. Like, the two of them had like such a fun chemistry together. I'm trying to remember what their team was. Their team was, because it was it like
Appetite for Destruction?
Appetite and Destruction, because then they did a tag team match with Super Dragon at one of the wrestling reunions.
God, I love that match. Dragon, Tozawa, and Steen versus Yoshino, Pac, and Generico. It is a match that happened at one of the Wrestle Reunion shows. We will talk about it. Had it happened in Reseda, it would be considered one of the greatest independent matches of all time. It just happened in the wrong building, which is a shame. Now, this match, I mean, we've already seen the transition that Tozawa has made post Chris Hero at the Battle of Los Angeles. Like, Tozawa is becoming the Tozawa that we would come to know. This is a match that Kevin Steen has talked about, though, as Steen didn't have any bookings lined up after the show that we're about to talk about, Ring of Honor's 2010 Final Battle.
Right.
It is this match against Tozawa that reinvigorated a lot of the passion Kevin Steen had for professional wrestling that he had lost over the past few years.
And just as a point of correction, Nightmare Violence Collection. They are not Appetite for Destruction. Appetite and Destruction are Kevin Steen and Super Dragon. So your head was in the right place. It just, we took a wrong corner.
My head was in the right place. My heart led me down the wrong path again, though. That is a damn shame. And like I said, we moved to Ring of Honor's Final Battle, which we mentioned just to give a portrait of the independent landscape at the time. This is a historically great Ring of Honor show. All Night Express versus Future Shock in the opener. Colt Cabana versus DGUSA alumni TJP. There's a women's match here with Sarah Del Rey and Serena Deeb versus Awesome Kong and Daisy Hayes. Eddie Edwards versus Sanjay Dutt. Man of the Hour Homicide defeated Christopher Daniels. There's a cluster with the Briscoes and the Kings of Wrestling. There is, of course, Davey Richards challenging and then coming up short for the Ring of Honor World title against Roderick Strong in an insane match. And then in a horrifically violent match, Kevin Steen loses to El Generico in the unsanctioned mask versus career fight without honor.
Yeah, this was like, while all this stuff was happening in Dragon Gate USA is keeping up on it, this was the feud that really kind of took over the independent landscape, was this Generico breakup and then the huge feud where, like, basically Kevin Steen and Steve Corino were just brutalizing El Generico at every point. Colt Cabana was like his second. It was trying to get El Generico back. El Generico changed his mask to an all-black one because his heart was broken. And then there was, like, the chair that was used that was all bloody. And then just a brutal match. And then, you know, this, as you mentioned with Kevin Steen, like, this was it for him because him and Cornette did not get along. So this was it for those two. And this is...
I don't think there's been a feud in wrestling that has, over the last decade, been comparable to what Steen and Generico did. A thoughtfully laid out year-long feud that felt old school, but had a new school mentality to it in terms of the way they worked, the way they acted, the promos they cut on one another. It is something that wrestling needs. And unfortunately, it just doesn't have that right now. And I don't know exactly why that is. I think AEW certainly has been the closest, at least in America, to replicating this in some form or fashion. But the hatred and the passion and the intensity of the Kevin Steen and El Generico feud is something that I greatly miss in the entire wrestling landscape.
And this is something that, especially with like the indie boom that would happen 6 years later, I think everyone kind of forgets about, and they think about their version of this feud in NXT that is just a shell of like what they did here. And then like the route that Kevin Steen had in Ring of Honor up until when he left, like after he lost the title and the whole evil thing, he was just in Scum. He was just working on a different level that was incredible. And El Generico, I mean, like, there's a reason why they constantly go back to him, and those two are forever linked, because this feud is this powerful. And yeah, this is something that I don't think has really happened in independent wrestling since. Like, I'm trying to think of like the closest thing to it, really, I guess. Maybe was it Cody's pursuit of the NWA title was the last thing with so much like investment into it?
I don't know about the build to that. I know that I was in the building at All In, though, and I am still embarrassed at just how into that match I was and how into Cody I was that night. I still think that 1 hour tease and Cody left thousands of dollars on the table by not having Cody new NWA champion t-shirts printed and ready to sell as fans were leaving the building that night because they're 1 hour tees. They could have said it was their gimmick and they fired up these shirts as soon as the bell rang because there would have been time. And I know leaving the Sears Center that night, I wanted a Cody Rhodes NWA champion t-shirt. And I think the NWA, part of it is just the coverage, the lack of people that watch it, some of the hands they've been dealt. I think they are in the spirit of doing something like this. Whether they have workers that are talented enough to do this is going to be their greatest obstacle.
Yeah, like it's just like the investment here was it, and that is the obstacle. And yeah, no, imagine, because knowing the Bucks would have had those t-shirts ready. You know, the Bucks would have sold them in the ring. They've been like, close out, security, go away, come buy his tickets, and they would have like pulled up the ring aprons case, and there would have just been boxes of the t-shirts underneath the ring at all.
Oh, it's something that for whatever reason has stuck with me to this day of just tell the 1 hour tees guys your plans, have them print some shirts, and then sell these shirts as people are walking out the door. Because All In, they sold out of all of their merchandise. I mean, there was nothing left by, even by the time the Cody match hit the ring, I mean, it was all gone. And if they just would have had those boxes, specially sealed, do not open until this time, hide them in the back. Oh God, they could have made so much money on Cody NWA t-shirts, but it's not my cross to bear. It's in the past. I can't change it. I can't change what happened on Ring of Honor Final Battle 2010, and I wouldn't because I love that show, and I did not have the power to change what was happening in Dragon Gate in November and December of 2010. So, Mike, what was going on in Japan at this point?
So a lot of things were happening, and as we talked about in the last episode, Naruki Doi was off these shows because he formed Team Doi right before, like 2 days before the show, which is kind of a wild thing about. And then we had a whole lot of stuff happening for like the remainder of the year. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a rewind just for a second, just to catch people up to speed. We've already have the fact that Doi is turned on them, and as Lenny Leonard said greatly on the show, like he wanted him to be a minion, and World wanted to be that way. So we had this new thing that was being formed out of the shell of Deep Drunkers, but Nesca, the team of Susumu Yokosuka and Kness, were out for the save there. And then we had a later Triangle Gate match, and then we had a pretty big remainder of November. Like this is a big time. Like this is we're now like where I said like we're building up to it. Now the foot's completely on the gas case. Now we are basically within this will be the last episode that we talk about Blood Warriors as a future thing, because these are the last few pieces that would be set up for that. So we have a couple big shows and a couple big moments and some things to get your takes on as we go from this. Masato Yoshino is announced to make his next defense of the Dream Gate against CIMA at Gate of Destiny in Osaka on November 23rd. And this is the same time as the November 5th Korakuen, which I'm going to run down with you, Case, because I know that you saw the stuff that came out of this Korakuen, but I don't know how much you've seen this match itself. This Korakuen was headlined with a match we don't see very often, the 8-man tag team Nanawa style elimination match, where World 1 of BB Hulk and Masato Yoshino and Nesca of Kness and Susumu Yokosuka defeated the Team Doi team of Naoki Tanizaki, Naruki Doi, Takuya Sugawara, and Yujutsu Kanda. Yoshino eliminates 3 of the 4 members of Team Doi in this match. Other matches on the show is Osaka Zenroku defeating Anthony W. Mori and Don Fuji. And Anthony W. Mori is not a person that we touch on a lot in Open the Voice Gate just because of this, because this was the show that he announced his retirement at the end of the year at their first Korakuen in December. Other matches on the show worth note, we had a Kamikaze versus Warriors Trio match of Cyber Kong, Shingo, Takagi, and Yamato defeating Dragon Kid, Genki Horiguchi, and Ryo Saito. So, Case, did you see any of this show? I know you talked about watching the Mori retirement match. I didn't know if you caught this Korakuen as well.
No, unfortunately, just the time period of this show that we have discussed up to this point, the 2009-2010 Dragon Gate stuff, is the footage that has been least available to me and also subsequently the least interesting, so I haven't exactly attempted to dig out a lot of these shows, but I have seen nothing from this November Korakuen.
It was a really interesting Nanawa elimination match. Like, Nanawa style matches don't happen that often anymore in Dragon Gate. I don't think the last one might have been like 5 or 6 years ago. But I'm just going to read down the eliminations here because it's very much like you can tell the story that they're telling here. Tanizaki eliminated Hulk in 21 minutes. He then eliminates Kness in 23 minutes. Yokosuka eliminates Kanda and right after that. And then Doi eliminates Yokosuka in 25. And then Yoshido proceeds in eliminating Sugawara in 27 minutes, Tanizaki in 29 minutes, and Doi in 32 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not Tozawa. Yoshino's 2010 is something to behold. I mean, he goes on an insane run at the Dead or Alive pay-per-view where I think it's an elimination match where he eliminates a bunch of guys too, obviously wins the title at World 2010, and then has another elimination spree in this match.
Yeah, and during this match and in the lead up to Gate of Destiny when things really kick off, this happens at the Kobe show. I don't have the exact date on that. My apologies here for that. But during the show, Doi has been pretty much just been doing the build-up, but we do have the thing that Nesca are the current Twin Gate champions. And at this time, Gamma is really going off the deep end, and he's winning a Twin Gate shot by constantly attacking members of Kineska. Like, he brings out chairs. Like, it's actually pretty brutal stuff. Winning the challenge. And then he even gets in matches with, like, teammates like Genki Horiguchi on this Kobe show, where he starts attacking him for this. But then they say, all right, you get this title match. You just fucked up. Genki Horiguchi. CIMA has the dream key. He can't be in this match. He's going to be your partner. And he says, oh, it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be a mystery partner. The next day was their monthly show in Kyoto, where there was further breakdowns between Gamma and Warriors. And then he turns on Warriors, and he announces that Naruki Doi would be his Twin Gate champion Twin Gate challenger at Osaka. And that leads us to the 2010 show of the Gate of Destiny 2010. Dark match has dark three-way dance between Shenlong 2. Of course, that is the man we now know as Mondai Ryu, Kotoka, and Super Shisa, or Shisa Boy. Six-man tag of Genki Horiguchi and Ryo Saito with Nosawa Rongai versus the former Paz Hearts team, because we're now on Mori's retirement tour, of Anthony W. Mori, BB Hulk, and Super Shisa. They all came out in their Paz Hearts gear for this match. Riki Choshu was on the showcase, and do you know who he faced?
He faced Stalker Ichikawa. A big Riki Choshu fan, big Stalker Ichikawa fan.
42 seconds.
As it should be.
Yeah. Singles match, Kakator versus KZ. This was like a match that was moved around because all the things that happened on this. Pac defeated Dragon Kid to retain the Brave Gate, and then we had the Open the Twin Gate title match where Gamma and Naruki Doi defeated Nesca in 23 minutes and 14 seconds, and a little bit of an underwhelming match, I remember, because Nesca were really good at that time. And then we had an Open the Triangle Gate three-way elimination match where the Team Doi team of Naoki Tanizaki, Takuya Sugawara, and Yuzuki Kanda defeated the Kamikaze team of Shingo Takagi, Yamato, and Cyberkong, and the Veterans team now of Don Fuji, Kenichiro Arai, and Masaki Mochizuki. Mochizuki pinned Yamato, and then Kanda defeated Arai, and then Masato Yoshino defeated Shima in the main event of Gate of Destiny 2010. In case, I know that, is this a show that's been up on the network?
I don't believe this is up on the network. I know I told you before we recorded that I hadn't seen this show. I know the Yoshino versus Shima match. I actually have seen that because that's one that for whatever reason has always circulated well. That's always on Daily Motion or on YouTube on some weird account that gets taken down. Like Yoshino versus Shima in that match has just been out there. I know I haven't seen the full show because I didn't know about the Paz Hearts reunion match, and I quite honestly would like to see that. If there's a full version of this show circulating anywhere, Dragon Gate Network, God, it is hard to use. I was trying to do what I could to stall to get there eventually, and now as I am on that page and scrolling, I do not see this match on here, but I believe I'm looking in the right spot, and I believe that the match is not on there, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's an interesting show. Like, Yeah, that Yoshino Shima match gets around, and really, it's kind of a two-match show. Like, it is cool. Like, the Pause Art Reunion is worth watching if you're someone who's a Mori fan or you're just want to see something a little different. But really, this is a show where Pac and Dragon Kid is probably the other match of the night other than Dream Gate match. But there's one big thing that happened in the post-show from this that is kind of an important moment because we're starting to see important figures that would become the kind of the other side to Dr. Muscle. Of course, Dr. Muscle is like the big heel character that's supposed to be mystery and always reveals himself as someone, and it's usually used in a term. But Case, we need to start talking about Metal Warriors.
Oh boy, Mike, please take it away.
Well, so their masked guys basically wearing something that become very clear of who they were to begin with. They wear what like people have called them like the 300 immortal masks, like the Immortals would wear it in the movie 300, and they just would be all around the shows at this time. And at a big thing, it was at the end of the Gate of Destiny show was that the Metal Warriors popped up after the match when Shima lost to Yoshino, and they followed him to the back, and they would become a big thing for the rest of December. As we're going to get into here's something that I found in the Observer from November 29th, that Gaor TV announced they'd be producing a wrestling show to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the station at JCB Hall in Tokyo. Joint a Dragon Gate and All Japan show with the main event of Kenji Muto, Shima, and Tiger Mask 5 versus Suwama, Masato Yoshino, and Great Sasuke.
I love this show. It's a super, super fun show to go back and watch. We can talk about it more as we talk about the United shows, because there's some room there to break down that card. But if you have not seen at least the main event, it is worth tracking down. It's a really fun match with just an absurd amount of star power and Suwama.
I thought you were going to do the dig on Tiger Mask 5, not on Suwama, but I thought you were going to go left and you went right there.
What can I say, Mike? I keep you on your toes.
Yep, and something worth talking about, they announced the dates for the United Gate Championship, as the first night would be in Times Square at BB King's Blues Club, a venue that becomes kind of important to them, 129 in Philadelphia at the arena, and then, as we talked about earlier, Union City, New Jersey. But now it's time to talk about the Anthony W. Mori retirement show. There's one thing I wanted to hit on before we get to the retirement match itself. Nesca and Yoshino team against Team Doi. The Team Doi team is Gamma, Naruki Doi, and Takuya Sugawara. And after this match, Yoshino challenges Doi for the Twin Gate, and it turns out that the person that comes out is Shima. And they're like, hey, you're pissed off at Doi, I'm pissed off at Gamma, let's team together and go for the Twin Gate title. Because I know you asked about this before. And then they said, like, hey, if we win, we have to vacate the title immediately because we're not in the same unit, but we want to fuck those guys up.
Yeah, it's an unusual pairing. I mean, even during the Blood Generation days, 2005, 2006, there's not a ton of straight 2 versus 2 tags where Shima and Yoshino are on the same side. And at least off the top of my head, I don't remember them ever being in the same unit other than Blood Generation. Mike, am I forgetting something?
Blood Generation, they weren't in Typhoon together. They were not in Warriors together. They were on opposite sides of Junction 3 and Blood Warriors. Not on the same side as each other for Team Veteran Returns, and not in the same time for Over Generation. So no.
Yeah, so that jumped out to me on the cork, and that we'll discuss after the Anthony W. Mori retirement show, was very few Shima Yoshino tag matches with one another. That's a pairing that jumped out at me.
Yeah, and then they all came back together, and everyone who worked on the card who weren't heels and weren't like juniors were in the main event, as we had a 14-man tag team match, something that is, we will be talking a lot about these crazy huge tag matches when we really get into Blood Warriors Junction 3, where the World 1 team of BB Hulk, Masato Yoshino, and Pac team up with Nesca. They weren't officially affiliated, but they would be by the end of the year. Anthony W. Mori and Super Chisa, so you still get Pause Heart reunion here, defeating the Warriors team of Shima, Dragon Kid, Genki Horiguchi, Ryo Saito, Don Fuji, Kenichiro Wright, and Misaki Mochizuki as, at the time, the final match of his career.
Yeah, super fun match. Anthony W. Mori is still with the company in an office position. He's a full-time daily employee there. His career is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people that love the ongoing Ryo Saito, Anthony W. Mori sort of love angle that they did, and it's very entertaining. I have talked about how, watching all of the 2005 footage that I can find right now, and there's so much great trios matches between Mori, Hulk, and Shisa. And, Hulk is a rookie that year. Shisa is someone who is drastically shoved down the card and is basically made Blood Generation's personal jobber. And then Mori was just never a main eventer, but those three together were a thrilling trios team. And Mori's retirement match is one that is really fun. It's, it's just cool to see all of the heels out of this match, and it feels very much like a family affair, but a heated contest at that. It's a very, very fun retirement match.
Yeah, and it had a very interesting retirement ceremony because during the retirement, Doi and Takuya Sugawara came out to hassle them. Of course, Sugawara is a former royal brother with Anthony W. Mori. They threw flowers at him, and it looked like that Anthony W. Mori was about to cry, but then they left.
Yeah, phenomenal.
I made Team Doi at this time was a whole lot of fun. So after that, we do have the formal joining of Nesca into World 1. We do have a note that the Metal Warriors don't just seem to be just like tailing CIMA. They start messing with World 1 here. And that really starts on the show on December 12th. But after that point, then we really are getting kind of a full-fledged thing. We do have some announcements for the weekend that will be happening in America. We're going to kind of skip over those because we'll talk about those next week. They do announce the WrestleMania schedule here for this, that they are going to be in Atlanta this year. That would be going head-to-head against the Hall of Fame ceremony, but they avoid Ring of Honor. And it'll be at the Presidential Ballroom in Atlanta. And they said it was the company's fastest-moving tickets in a while. But now we move on to Sapporo, which we're getting to the end of this. I know that this is going on a little bit. This is kind of important stuff here because Sapporo, we had a Gamma and Naruki Doi match where they defeated Nesca, and then we had a Captain's Fall hair versus hair match where KZ was a captain on the Team Doi side going up against the World 1 team where Kotoka was the captain. Kotoka, of course, was a member of World 1 at this time, but he was the low man, and he was still basically a rookie here. The other two members of this match were Yasushi Kanda and BB Hulk.
This is aired, but I've never seen it. I know it's out there, but I just have not had the time to sit down and watch this match.
Yep. It's a match where there's a lot of tears in this month because Kotoka does cry a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And then we fast forward to the announcement that we do soon get. I don't have the exact date that they joined the tour, but we have the Dragon Gate debuts of Ricochet and Brodie Lee.
Well, Brodie Lee joins on the 21st on Cork and Hall, which I believe is the next televised show.
Right.
And then Ricochet, for whatever reason, is a few days before that because he comes in on a non-televised show. And specifically, just as I get my dates correctly, Ricochet debuts on December 10th, 2010 at CIMA. Ricochet and Mochizuki defeating Gamma, KZ, and Doi in a non-televised match.
Yeah, we've now seen Ricochet, and keep note, Ricochet came that date, and we'll be talking a lot about him for the Korakuen and the Final Gate. We are going towards the end of this timeline here, as the 12/21 Korakuen has a Dr. Muscle appearance in the opener with a team of Team Doi. Brodie Lee defeats KZ in 38 seconds. A match that I kind of want to go back and watch if I can find a copy of this. Kotoka and Shisa Boy versus Super Shenlong and Takuya Tomomakai, that's wild. 6 men.
Yeah, that's got our names written all over it. That's the sort of stuff that we are unfortunately very, very into.
It went at 8 minutes, so it got a little bit of time there.
Yeah, no, good for them.
Yeah, and then the main events on this show, not like Gabe, their main events, but this is all stuff happened after. Intermission, Kamikaze, Cyber Kong, Shingo Takagi, and Yamato defeating World 1 and Super Shisa. It was Pac and BB Hulk. Tag team match, the Mochifuji team defeated Nesca, and then Gamma and Naruki Doi defeated CIMA and Masato Yoshino in one of like the most like heel shenanigans matches. Like it was just ridiculous amount there. It just was really just insane. Brodie Lee did 2 matches on that show. I thought I had him in the opener. He's not in the opener. He only did that one match. I apologize. And then the Metal Warriors Attack World won after that match. And then we get to Final Gate 2010, which is a pretty stacked card of a lot of big events. And it does involve the reappearance of Gamma Dio versus Darkness Dragon, because Gamma is being an absolute asshole at this point. We do have a Kenichiro Arai and Nosawa Rongai match versus Kotoka and Super Chisa. A 3-way elimination match to decide the next contenders of the Twin Gate title, because one of the Twin Gate champions is in the main event, where Mochi Fuji is the number 1 contenders of that. BB Hulk defeating Yamato. There is like this big like hatred between those two at this time. And then the last 2 matches, which we really kind of need to cover here. The first one is the Open the Triangle Gate title match, where CIMA, Dragon Kid, and Ricochet defeat the Team Doi team of Naoki Tanizaki, Takuya Sugawara, and Yasushi Kanda.
Yes. The Ricochet career trajectory drastically changes at this point. And you will hear me talk about it on pretty much every show we cover in 2011, that Ricochet from December 2010, this show, or even if you want to back up to Freedom Fight in October, which is the Dragon Gate USA show we just talked about, look at his career then, and then look at his career 365 days later. It is a different human, and he's good at the end of 2010, but he is like nothing else by the end of 2011, because he spends, and I'll talk about it repeatedly on the show, he spends an entire year working with Pac, and it's the best thing that ever happened to his career. As for Brodie Lee, just briefly, Brodie works the Cork and Hall match, 38 seconds, and then he worked 2 house show matches, one against Super Shenlong, one against Shisa Boy. Those both went just over a minute, and then flew home before the Final Gate show, because it was on December 26th. Brodie Lee wanted to be home for Christmas, which only makes me think of, there's I think one comparable tour in Japan, and that is Shelton Benjamin in 2014 for New Japan. Flew home at the beginning of May, and then flew back at the end of May. Minoru Suzuki and Shelton Benjamin defeated Azuka and Yano in 8 seconds at New Japan's Back to Yokohama Arena in 2014, and then Shelton Benjamin flew home again. It is the only comparable tour where Benjamin worked that 8-second match, got on a plane, went home. Brodie Lee left before the big pay-per-view, but worked a total of 4 minutes in just an absurdly short tour.
Yeah, it's absurdly short, but it's always been a thing that Gaijin don't usually do Final Gate. So it does not surprise me so much, but Ricochet was in the dojo. Like, Ricochet moved to Japan, basically. So it makes sense in kind of a way, but it's still ridiculous to think 4 minutes of matches. Hey, you're getting your frequent flyer miles, though.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. The main event was Masato Yoshino defeating his forever linked, and I think it's fair to say now, his career, the person in the mirror to him, Naruki Doi, in the main event, where he defeats Naruki Doi in 28 minutes and 53 seconds in the post-match. And this will be the last part of the Dragon Gate timeline for here, as this was the last show of the year. 2 of the Metal Warriors attack Masato Yoshino and BB Hulk. They get a mask case, but they have balaclavas on, and no one is revealed. And that's how Dragon Gate ends its 2010.
Again, this is stuff we have to cover now, because the beginning of 2011 drastically changes the course of the promotion. I don't want to say forever, but it is the start of, at least in Western fans' eyes, I think one of the more infamous angles to ever occur in the company. And you have to talk, if you're going to talk Dragon Gate USA, you have to talk about Ricochet in his first tour of Japan, because again, completely changes him, maybe not as a person, but especially as a wrestler. And there's just there's so much stuff during this time period that even if it's not directly in Dragon Gate USA, it directly affects the promotion.
Yeah, and we are now T-minus 5 months from the start of Blood Warriors versus Junction 3, which will end up being something that has the ramifications that probably changes DGUSA more so than anything else, and I don't think it ever really gets back to, is Blood Warriors versus Junction 3. I'm just looking at over my notes. I have a huge document here. Shingo Takagi suffered an injury in Fukuoka. So that might be a reason. I know you have all the timeline. You have all the news wires. Was he announced for anything in January and pulled because of this shoulder injury?
I will let you know on the next episode because I am not sure.
Okay. And then we do have a Meltzer review of the pay-per-view. The only 5 matches that made pay-per-view were the Aries Cannon, or not, Jacobs Cannon, the World 1 versus Kamikaze USA, Shingo versus CIMA, Ronin versus Warriors, and then Yamato versus Masato Yoshino. He doesn't give any match other than the main event anything higher than 3 3/4. Like 3 3/4 is the highest thing, and Meltzer is very down on it. Just to read the quote from it, this is actually from the January 17th Observer the next year. Dragon Gate's Freedom Fight pay-per-view debuted on 1/7 and in demand and Dish Network in the United States. It's the usual product. Every match is good, although there's no matches of the year on the show. In some ways, the highlights are the improvement in the work of the persona of the newer American stars they are pushing, like Jon Moxley, Johnny Gargano, and Chuck Taylor. There's also a negative evident right away, which is the arena in Rahway, New Jersey, and the crowd. While the crowd was not dead and seemed knowledge to a degree to the Dragon Gate stars, it did come across with an indie feel instead of a major league feel. The building looked terrible on TV, and some shots with only a few rows of people on the side. It was an atmosphere that no matter what anyone did, they weren't coming across as stars doing it. You got good fast-paced wrestling. Everyone on the show is crisp and has basic booking direction. And considering how Dave was about like the initial 3 shows here, that's a huge drop.
Mike, I stand by my statement. I think up to this point, Freedom Fight 2010, the weakest show in the Dragon Gate USA catalog.
I think so too. Were there any other big notes that you wanted to hit on before we go?
Mike, we've covered it. We have covered the October landscape and what led up to it in Dragon Gate USA, and we have covered everything after leading up to the first triple shot in Dragon Gate USA coming up at the end of January 2011. We will be covering those shows the next 3 weeks. In the meantime, you can find me on Twitter @_in_your_case. You can find us on Twitter @OpenVoiceGate, where both Mike and I tweet. Mike, where can the people find you?
I'm at Fujiheya.
It doesn't change, people. We're still there.
I mean, at this point, I don't know what I would change in my handle to.
No, I hate my Twitter handle, but I also know that if I ever changed it, Rich Craich of the Voice of Wrestling flagship podcast would never be able to adjust to it. And I do genuinely like when he compliments my work on the podcast and he always mentions my Twitter, and I just know it's too late in the game for him to change, and I don't know what I would change it to if I had to change it.
Yeah, I mean, I like my Twitter handle. It's nice and short. I'm the only person that would have a joke about Don Fuji as their Twitter handle. It fits me.
Mike, that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's it for me. I can already feel my voice going, and it's only Tuesday. So I'm going to call it here. For Case, I'm Mike. We'll catch you next time on the Open the Voice Gate Rewind as we look into 2011 and finally start crowning some dang tag team champions. Have a great week, everyone.